Morning, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable. Again, it's Sunday. Our program is called What's Going On Here. We endeavor to show you what's going on in the area. My name is Bob Venn. Calvin Castine with the camera, and our guest this morning is a man by the name of Cloutier, Paul Cloutier. How close is that?
That's pretty close.
Cloutier, well, how do you say it?
I anglicize a little bit. I call it Cloutier.
Cloutier, okay. Paul Cloutier. Now, if you've paid attention to the news, the papers over the years, you knew this man was our mayor here in Rouse's Point for years. And we're going to be talking a little bit about operations because of bypasses. This man is is the dean of the bypass operations in the North Country, I think, and recent innovations, and we're going to talk about that and find out just, you look good.
I feel good. You feel wonderful.
All right. Well, first of all, before we get into your heart, let's just see how you got to Rouse's Point, where you were raised, and a little bit about your background.
Well, I was born in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I lived in Massachusetts area near the New Bedford, Dartmouth region for a good number of years of my life. In 1969, I moved to the Allentown, Pennsylvania area with a company by the name of Raytheon, which was a big electronics company in Massachusetts. They bought out a company called Cloutier, which manufactured gas ranges and appliances of that nature. Well, I was transferred to the Cloutier plant in 1969 and lived there for roughly 10 years, and then in 1977 I started to work for Harris Corporation at that time.
Harris, that's Champlain?
It was, yes, it was at that time still called Harris.
In Pennsylvania?
Yes, I started. In fact, I was probably the first, well, I know I was the first engineer hired by them to make the transition up here to the North Country. That was part of the agreement of being hired, that I would relocate up here in the Champlain area. In 1979, that relocation actually took place. Although most of the engineering department came up in 78, my particular product group, which was newspaper machines, we were in the midst of a design project at that time. And they felt that moving us would be detrimental to our development, so we waited a little longer and we finished our design before we came up. I actually moved to Rouse's Point here, I think it was April or May of 1979. And I've been here ever since. Okay.
Now, we kind of skipped there when you were back in Massachusetts. You have college, service time?
Yes, I attended, well, unfortunately, the college I went to changed its name 4 times. I don't know if they're ashamed of me or what, but it started off as the New England Institute of Textiles and Technology, and then it changed to the New Bedford Institute of Technology, and then it changed its name one more time to the Southeastern Massachusetts Technical Institute, and then it eventually became SMU, or Southeastern Massachusetts University, which you may have seen in the basketball playoffs. They were pretty prominent. They're a branch of, or a satellite branch of the University of Massachusetts. It was located in Dartmouth, Mass.
Okay.
And it's it wasn't there when I was going to school, but that's where it eventually ended up.
So you were engineering, were you?
Yeah, I took an engineering degree, a bachelor's degree in engineering, and mechanical engineering, basically.
Okay, so you came up here with, now somewhere along the line you nearly got into the printing business. You married a young lady from the printing business.
Well, the two businesses in a sense are related. I have some knowledge obviously about newspaper products and the like. However, I was fortunate enough to marry a very delightful woman, Elaine Rochester, whose dad owns the Border Press, and that's how I got affiliated with the printing business. But I don't know an awful lot about printing. She does. She knows 10 times more than I'll ever know.
Okay. You were up here, well, not too many years before you said, this is an active political town. I'm going to become a politician here. Were you on the board at all, as a trustee?
No. Actually, I tried running for village justice twice and lost. All right, and I guess people figured by the third time, either the third time's lucky or whatever, a few people talked me into running for mayor in 1984. That was the end of the
Don't know who was
Can't
it,
think
huh?
of his name right now.
McManus?
McManus
yeah.
administration. He had decided that he was retiring, and a group of people talked me into running for mayor. I did so, and by some strange quirk of fate, I was elected mayor from the year 1984 through 1986.
Okay, we'll take a short break and come back and tell you some very unusual thing about that 1984, if not election, at least the inauguration. You have no idea how long we've been off between takes here, and one of the things we mentioned a little bit about, I was surprised that he had come here from Massachusetts, but you made the circle nearly. You said that you were pretty close to this area.
In a sense, my roots are closer here than actually where I was born, because my dad was born right at St. Paul, Illinois, right over the border here. And
10 miles, is it?
10, 11 miles,
11
something
miles,
like that, yeah. And my grandfather and my great-grandfather were born in St. Valentine. And my mother, of course, was born in Rivière-du-Loup. That's a little French for you.
Yeah. What was her maiden name?
Plourde, Plourde.
So that's quite a bit of French in
Well, I'm all French.
Cloutier.
Now, I'm all French. Cloutier and Florida is about as French as you can get. In fact, the derivation of my name means maker of nails.
Maker of nails.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's Clou. They
Yeah.
used to say that, yeah. That
Cloutier.
means nail, yeah.
Yeah.
That means maker of nails. All right, Paul, you ran for this election and you just couldn't wait to get elected. You were elected. Now you're waiting to, how long is there, a month or so, waiting to get?
Well, the irony of this is I was elected on Tuesday of March that year. I think it was the 20th or something like that. And the following Sunday, which was about 24th to 25th, I woke up that morning and you wouldn't believe it, I had chest pains, real severe chest pains. And actually, this is a little bit in reverse in the telling. Prior to having that particular attack in 1981, I had already had some heart problems and had already gone through a quadruple bypass.
All right, I guess we missed that along the way. So in 81, you had your very first one.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, I missed that one. I did know that. I come to think, all right, 81, what happened?
Well, and I happened to have been on 2 weeks vacation, went out, did a little boating, came back in, tied my boat up, and as I bent down and tied my boat up, I had a chest pain. I thought it was probably something I had eaten, and a little indigestion. I didn't think too much about it. Came home, spent the next day or two doing things around the house like mowing lawns and all these really neat things you should do when you're having heart problems. But of course I didn't realize that's what was going on. The Monday morning I got ready to go back to work. I got up, took a shower, dressed and sat down for a cup of coffee, and promptly everything went to pieces real quick. I got a very severe chest pain. I felt like an elephant was stepping in the middle of my chest. My face turned blue. I couldn't breathe. I looked at my wife and said, "Get a doctor, please." And we were rushed down to CVPH. Dr. Racine was the doctor on duty at that time, and it was determined that I was having a very severe angina attack. I was hospitalized at CVPH. A couple of days later, I had a second attack that was pretty bad, at which time the doctors in Plattsburgh felt that it would be appropriate for me to go over to Burlington and have a catheterization done, because they weren't doing them here at that point.
Okay, stop there a minute. You mentioned you having an angina attack. What's an angina attack?
Well, an angina attack is when you have what is known as coronary artery disease, which is basically my disease. There are different types of heart disease, but that's the most prominent. When you get a blockage in your coronary arteries, the arteries that feed the heart itself, when that muscle, when you have a blockage, you're not getting adequate blood supply to the muscle of the heart itself in that area. And what occurs is the heart starts yelling for help, and basically it does that by giving you pain.
Okay.
That's basically what angina is. Angina isn't truly a heart attack. It's sort of like a warning bell saying, hey, you've got problems, you better take this further.
Okay, now, they do give you little tablets that you can put in your mouth for angina. What does that do?
Well, that's nitroglycerin. Myself, I don't use the tablets. I have a spray. It's a lot like the breath spray, but basically it's nitroglycerin. It's a measured dose. And if I get chest pain, I just pop it and spray it in my mouth under my tongue. Basically, the little pills do the same thing. It's a very small dosage. They
Mhm.
put it under your tongue. Nitroglycerin instantly, when I say instantly, I mean it's about as quickly as you can blink your eye. It opens up all the arteries in your body. It causes them to expand.
That quick.
Yeah, it's quick.
My father said it used to hit him, and it would hit him in the head when he'd take a pill.
Oh.
Did it bother you like that too?
I guess it is. In fact, it's ironic that that is one thing that can help you. But a lot of people, including myself, will sometimes not take the medication immediately because you fear the headache. Because obviously you have arteries and vessels in your head, and they expand too, and
I
you
see.
get a super migraine real quick.
Okay.
And I'm very susceptible to it, extremely sensitive to nitroglycerin. I've had a lot of it over the years. So.
I'm sure you people out there know, you've heard these stories from your relatives and friends, but we're getting it firsthand this morning from Paul Cloutier, and he's been through it. Now, I interrupted you where you were going to send you to Burlington for some catheterization.
Okay.
What did that entail?
Basically, they sent me over to Burlington by ambulance across the ferry, and they brought me into the Burlington Hospital, where the doctors evaluated my situation, felt that I was suffering from what was called unstable angina. In other words, it couldn't be monitored or kept under control with medication. They did a cardiac catheterization, which is basically they make a small incision in your groin area, and they insert a heart catheter, and they work it up. And it's amazing how it's done. They work it up to your heart, and they are able to go to the various arteries that feed your heart with this wire-like thing. And they inject a dye, and at the point where they're injecting dye, they're taking a fluoroscopic type picture of your heart as well. You can see this all going on the screen while it's occurring, because you're awake while they're doing it. It's rather ironic. You're laying there looking at this TV screen, and you're seeing this wire bounce around, and you see the shadow of your heart around it. Makes you wonder.
You see, was it in your family? Your family has these problems? It usually is, huh?
It's hereditary in my case. My dad had severe heart disease. He passed away at the age of 55. My mother in her early 60s. My older brother at 59. I have another brother that's also older than me that has heart disease as well.
My stepfather was Lyman Castine, and his family all had, I shouldn't say all, but a number of them all died before they were 65, the man in particular. And he went over to Burlington, but they said he was not a candidate for the test because he was just too far gone, so they wouldn't give him the test, and nothing they could do.
That's why they take the preliminary evaluation first, to see if you can accept or if you can go through the procedure. The procedure is, it's become relatively commonplace now. A lot of people have them. The risk factors are not super great. I mean, you're talking survival rates in excess of 98% from the catheterization process. I mean, sometimes things do go wrong.
But they have you sign this form, and they tell
they
you
sure
that there are some risks. They tell you this, right?
Yes.
Now, you were one of the first. 81, this wasn't a very common operation, was it?
No, it was, let's put it this way, great advances have been made since 81 in this particular direction, but my first experience was they did the catheterization, and they came back and they gave me news that literally almost blew me out of the bed, because they told me, they said, you've got one completely blocked artery, and you had at some point in time already suffered a heart attack. It apparently was a silent one, and you weren't even aware of it. This happens sometimes. However, at this point in time, you have 4 blockages in your heart. Two were extremely severe, and 2 were in the 50% range.
Now, when you say in your heart, you mean in the heart or leading to the heart?
Actually, they're on the surface of the heart. They are the arteries that feed the heart itself. The heart muscle itself needs to be fed, and it's fed by your coronary arteries. Okay, there are 3 main coronary arteries: your right coronary artery, your what they call left or left anterior descending coronary artery, which covers the left side of the heart, and then you have a group that goes around the back of the heart. Those are obtuse marginals. I know all the
this is a heart specialist himself, here. We're going to take a short break here, and we're going to come back and tell you, you don't put your hand over your heart when you do this. It's not the truth at all, but we'll come back. We're talking with Paul Cloutier, and this is something that in a lot of families, a lot of families have suffered heart problems. It's one of the big killers in the United States. So we thought it was very appropriate to bring something on this to you. And besides, this is a nice guy.
I don't know about
First thing we're going to do is find out where our heart is. Where it's not here.
Well, it's basically almost right in the center of your
Right
chest.
here,
A
yeah.
little bit to the left, but
Uh-huh.
mostly to the center of your chest. A lot of people, even myself, I used to think
Y-
this
yeah,
is the spot,
yeah.
but it's really right here. And that's where when you're getting chest pain, that's basically where you get it.
Well,
a lot
when
of
the,
times you get
when
it.
the doctor comes and puts that,
Oh, he's
that's
checking
his-
all over.
He's checking his, I think, is their lungs get
Your
up that
lungs,
high?
yeah,
Lungs
yeah.
get up that high too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because there is another heart disease called congestive heart failure where your lungs do fill up because your heart isn't pumping adequately to clear that out.
So after you had this catheterization in Burlington now, in '81, did you come home or did they say?
Yes, I came home first. Basically, what they suggested is that we try to maintain things on medication. Of course, that's the conservative approach, which is the right approach. You really don't want to run in under a knife right away. And for the entire summer, the remainder of that particular year, we attempted to maintain it with medication. But what was occurring between the stress at work and worrying about the heart disease and all kinds of other things, I was getting continued almost daily angina. And the medication, they kept upping the medication and upping the medication, and it got to a point where literally I could just about function. I mean, the medication is potent, and you get to a point where, something better has got to be done.
My father, I think talking with some of his brothers, had the feeling, Mr. Castine, that he had the feeling that these anginas would relieve him, but you could only take so many. When you took that many, you were done. And so he kept putting them off, taking them, and taking pain, because he didn't want to, he only had so many, you're going to make them last.
Well,
He never understood that you could take all you wanted, except that it really knocked him in the head.
Well, you have to weigh which part you want to hurt the worst.
Yeah.
Because if you want the magnificent headache, keep taking the nitros. But on an average, if you take 3 nitros and do not get chest pain relief, get to the hospital.
Mhm.
If you've gone through 3 of them, the doctors really want to see you.
Okay, so you decided somewhere then in the...
Well, shortly thereafter, they made a decision, let's go for the surgery. I entered the hospital in November. Actually, the surgery was performed November 1st, 1981. It was a successful quadruple bypass.
Quadruple?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I can tell you this. It is something to go through. Frightening. It's scary. It's
Sure, I'm
worrisome.
sure that...
It's uncomfortable, especially after the surgery when you have the breastbone trying to heal itself and the long incisions that you get from where they take the veins out of other parts of your body.
So they're taking veins out of your leg,
Yeah.
usually, and replacing that portion?
Basically what they did on that particular operation, because again, as you mentioned earlier, this was early in the bypass history, they took the veins out of my left leg. They're called saphenous veins, and they cut them into little pieces, and they use them to bypass. Basically what they do is they connect one end through to the aorta, and then bypass the blocked area and go beyond that blocked
So they don't remove the other one at all?
No, they leave the native ones
okay.
there. But they're not doing much good because they're plugged up.
They tell me that there's Dick Collins had the operation later, and I used to talk to him about how he felt, and he said that he had more trouble in his ankles where the incision had been than he did with the pain from the chest. And it went for a long period. He was wondering if it was natural.
Well, when they take a vein out of your leg, basically a vein, arteries carries blood away from your heart and feeds areas. Veins are sort of like the return system. They bring the blood back to your heart for recirculation. And when they're doing that, when they remove a vein from your leg, obviously they're taking away some of the drainage system. So you do tend to get swelling in your legs. And that can cause some discomfort, it can cause some pain. But you sort of either get used to it, or the more you exercise, the better off you're going to be.
We tried to compare some of these with what it was until now. So about how long were you in the hospital? Do you remember the first time?
The first time, this is going to amaze you, I hope. I never was in the hospital with a bypass operation longer than 7 days.
Even back in '81?
Even back in '81. through the gift of God, I guess, I heal quickly.
You sound like Jim Misek. Jim Misek heals quickly too.
I
We
healed
were
very
talking-
quickly. I was up and around in a matter of days, and I was home within 7 days.
Wow.
In fact, I went back to work at Harris. This was in November. I went back to work January 6th, which is exactly 66 days from the time I left to go
That's
for the
early.
surgery.
That's quick, isn't it? Huh?
It was. Maybe a little too soon, but
But you were
I
feeling
went
good.
back. I felt well enough to go back to work, yes.
Yeah. Particularly when you had felt bad and you see how good you feel at the time. It's a
Well, the
great thrill.
the amazing thing after you have a bypass operation or any of these major heart procedures, you do get a surge of energy. You become completely, you're amazed actually at how much you lost over the years, because the disease is gradual. It isn't like something that just comes on fast. You lose ability to do something, you get more tired, you don't have as much energy, but shortly after having a bypass operation, your energy level shoots right up.
Now, you referred several times to disease
Yeah.
rather than an affliction. It's a disease, you're saying.
Coronary artery disease is precisely that.
Okay.
It's caused, in my case, I also have what's known as hypocholesterolemia, which basically my body is designed to produce too much cholesterol. So that complicates the issue. Right now, it's very much under control because I take medications. There are medications that can keep the numbers low, and I do exercise regularly. And you watch your diet. If you do all three of those things, you can last a pretty long time.
Okay, so you you were feeling good in January of '82, and you had no real
No
problems
problems. Went back to work. Went right back to doing what I was doing.
until you
before.
stuck your nose into elections.
Then I got into politics.
Yes,
And
and-
boy, did that become a pain.
Yes, so that right after you were elected, before you could get sworn in, you had
Well,
problems.
yeah, actually, I was elected on a Tuesday, and on the following Sunday, I woke up approximately 5 o'clock in the morning. I had a severe chest pain. At first, I thought it was indigestion. I did all the silly things. Got up and took an Alka-Seltzer, got up and took antacids, walked around pounding my chest in. Boy, have I got a gas bubble. It wasn't a gas bubble. Finally, I awakened my wife and said, honey, I think you better take me to the hospital. I'm in trouble. Well, she called the medical center, North Country Medical Center, and we were told to get over there as quickly as possible. We went. Dr. Starr happened to be on duty that day. He put me on the EKG machine right away and promptly called the Rouse's Point ambulance and said, we've got an active heart attack right now, which was a surprise to me, but I didn't argue with him. I did make one silly comment, though. I said, I'd like to go to Burlington to get fixed. And he just said, you don't have the time.
Oh.
So we went to Plattsburgh, which was, in a way, very beneficial to me, in many ways very beneficial to me, because by the time I reached Plattsburgh Hospital in the ambulance, I was literally out of it. Between the medications they gave me on the ambulance and the heart attack itself, it was relatively severe.
You know, this is a great time again to mention these emergency units of the communities. Thank God for those people.
Oh, my God. Well, ironically, I've been named an honorary fireman. It wasn't because I'd ridden in their ambulance more than anybody else, but I probably could be, because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, between both Rouse's Point, Champlain, and the Tech Sixes that are able to administer medications on board, I can't thank them enough. There's no way I could thank them enough, because I've ridden in that condition so many times down there that
All right.
we have sort of a passing joke, you know, you're not going to get an IV started. Yes, we are. No, you're not.
Okay, before we get into the hospital, take a short break. You're watching Hometown Cable. Our program is called What's Going On Here every Sunday, and we thank you very much for your comments about the program. I had a couple this weekend about the senior celebration, and a couple, believe it or not, two very good, very happy to watch the Cheese Factory tour up in Noyen, Quebec. Somebody said, I did not realize that's how you make cheese. Do they make all cheese that way? And I said, yes. It's just a different, what you put in it. But basically, it's all made the same way. And they were glad to do it. And we're very thankful that you do make the comments and recommendations. I'll get into that a little bit later. We're talking with Paul Cloutier. I guess I closed off. Put my foot in that. I'm talking about the cheese, eh, Paul?
Well, there's really nothing wrong with cheese. I love it myself, but it probably is high on the list of high fat and high cholesterol items that are probably not the best for heart patients.
We're heart patients, all right. You know, we talk about, they always talk about the bypasses, and they're always at the heart. We have veins, we have arteries outside. Do they always seem to happen around the heart rather than away from the heart?
Well, most of them are, when it happens, it actually is the heart muscle itself is in trouble because it's not getting adequate blood supply, and it's basically those arteries that are built, I guess that's the only way to say it, that are part of the heart structure itself. They're external to the heart, or they're actually part of it, but it's not really an artery in your arm that's going to get in trouble. It's the ones that are on your heart feeding the blood to your heart. Your heart, being a muscle, has to have a food supply.
You said there's about 3 of them, right?
Well, there's 3 with many branches.
Okay.
I mean, you
Big
could
ones.
come up with a list of about 15 different branches, and they've all got their own titles, but the 3 main ones.
You inhale oxygen, and it goes to your lungs, and then it gets into your blood, and it's circulating around the body. That's basically what we're talking
Well,
about?
basically, what you've got is you've got one side of the heart pumps the blood to your body, the other side of the heart pumps the blood up to your lungs to be oxygenated. It comes back to the heart and then gets into the section that pumps it into the body. So it gets reoxygenated every cycle.
Quite a machine, isn't it? You talk about your big engineering and all
Oh
that.
my God, I don't believe there's an engineer in this world that could come up with anything as magnificent as the engineering of a heart. Oh my God, it is an amazing thing. It's a self-sustaining pump. Has its own electrical system,
You think
and
how
just
many,
keeps going.
think how many times it pumps, say, over the course
Oh
of a
my God,
lifetime?
well, the average pulse, if you stop and think, the average healthy pulse is about 84 a minute. So stop multiplying, you're going to think, it beats pretty quick.
Yeah, and we don't think a thing about it. It's there,
No,
it's doing its job.
all involuntary.
All right, we get you to the hospital again. We're going to get back now. You get into the hospital in 1984. You're nearly mayor, not quite, but you're nearly mayor. You've been elected, and you're down and you're saying, what happened? It's only 3 years since I've had this whole thing done. Did something come apart? Do you think maybe something came apart?
No, it was just, I guess it was just a quirk of fate.
But do you think?
No, actually my thoughts were, please take away this pain
Oh,
and get me
yeah,
a doctor as
yeah.
soon as possible.
Yes.
That's where I got lucky. I ran in, the doctor on duty at the hospital that day, the doctor that was dealing with heart people at that time was Dr. Richard Paulus, who used to be at Plattsburgh CVPH. And he was the doctor on my case. He got me through that Sunday morning. It was a substantial heart attack. It was dangerous. Frankly, that portion of it, I have only glimpses of people floating by rooms and that kind of thing because I was highly sedated and I was in no condition to know really what was going on. In those days, the average hospital stay for what they call an MI, a myocardial infarct. That's basically what happens is the artery is blocked, so the muscle from the point where the blockage occurs starts to die slowly, that portion of muscle, of heart muscle. That's called an infarct. That's a heart attack. That leaves scar tissue. Okay? So I was in an infarct at that point in time. Dr. Paulus gave me the medications, the appropriate medications, and did the right things to keep me going and kept me alive. About 4 or 5 days later, the 30th of March, I had been taken out of coronary care department and put in a regular room on the heart floor, R3, which in those days you usually spent 5 days in coronary care and 5 days on the floor. Well, we weren't out there more than an hour or two, and bang, another one came along, and I had a second heart attack. So promptly right back into coronary care, and they administered to me again, give me the appropriate drugs and medications, and they were able to stop it or at least control it adequately. At that point in time, they decided, well, we better get him over to Burlington again. So off again on the ferry, we went again.
We say because they weren't doing heart operations in Plattsburgh of that
They
type.
still to this day do not do that
Okay.
type of operation. To do thoracic surgery, to do open heart surgery requires a lot of equipment and highly skilled doctors, and not that the doctors in Plattsburgh aren't skilled, they just don't have the facilities there to handle this type of thing. So heart surgery actually takes place over in Burlington. Because basically when they do a bypass operation, they stop your heart. They have to have a pump do what your heart's doing. It's an external pump, and this is very expensive equipment, and not all hospitals can afford
Now,
that kind of thing.
Is this where you were given your oath as the mayor? In
No,
Plattsburgh,
actually,
in
in
Burlington?
between, to get back to that thing,
Yeah.
in between is between heart attack number 1 and heart attack number 2. Actually, it was after heart attack number 2, but before I went to Burlington, it came time to become mayor, and I was sworn in coronary care because they couldn't get me out of the bed. I had IVs hanging from my arms. I
Yeah.
have pictures of this thing,
Yeah.
which, my God, when I look at those pictures, I wonder why I even took the oath of office. I should have said
Yeah.
I quit.
Was that Dave Marshall gave you? I saw a
Yes,
picture.
Dave
I saw a
Marshall and
picture.
Terry Dunn was the administrator
Okay.
at that time. Yeah.
Okay, so they send you over to Burlington.
They sent me over there to Burlington, and now as official mayor of Rouse's Point, but not doing anything. Burlington, again, evaluated me, recommended another catheterization. They went back and looked, and basically what they found is 3 of the original 4 bypasses were completely plugged up, and that I was in need of additional surgery. This was like April or May, and this is like the beginning of summer. Emotionally and physically, I was not prepared to deal with the surgery at that time. They maintained me on medication. I just wasn't ready to do it. Ironically, when the time came for me to have the second bypass operation, it was done 3 years to the day of the first one, November 1st, 1984. And it was done basically by the same surgeon. It was a triple bypass. I survived that one as well. Again, 7 days healing period. I was home again. A few other minor things developed, like this time they had to use the veins out of my right leg. I had a slight leg infection there, but we were able to deal with that. And I had another little problem with the chest incision, but we were able to deal with that. But it took a while, but we got back.
You were working too at the time?
Well, actually, after I got out of there, when I came back, I really was anxious to go back to Harris because I really enjoyed my job and I enjoyed what I was doing. Unfortunately, the doctors looked me straight in the face and said, "No, thank you. If you go back, you're not going to make it.
Oh. Stress
you are,
level.
you are now retired, whether you like it or not."
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't like it.
No. Now, Paul, we'll take another break here, but before we do, when you were given your oath, that made the papers across the United States, as I recall. It was very unusual.
I don't know if it went all the way across the United States, but it made a lot of newspapers.
I know it did.
Yeah.
I remember it did, yeah.
It was a dramatic picture. It was an experience for me.
I knew who Paul was by sight. I did not know Paul at the time, really, for any conversation much, but it was a. You got to say it's one of the highlights of your life. You don't say like
yes,
it, but
I wouldn't want to repeat it, but
and being a mayor here would put a little bit of stress on you too.
well, yeah, it
You
was
know,
it
come
was
on,
a stressful administration.
You didn't consider resigning?
Well, do you want the truth, or would you
The
like
truth, yeah.
Okay, well, the truth. I felt in the fact, basically, that I was not going to be able to work at my regular job. I wanted to do something. And I felt that if I didn't get too far afield, that I could handle the job. It was stressful. However, the employees and a lot of people were supportive. But to be very frank with you, thinking it over, if I had my life to relive, it's probably a period of time where I could have found something else to do.
Yeah.
Because politics are nice, they're interesting, but they are stressful.
Politics in Rouse's Point are eventful. I will say that. There has been for many years.
He said it, not me.
Listen, I didn't say anything wrong. I said it's eventful. Way back to Mayor Kalana and the rest. There was always something in Rouse's Point. We're pretty calm in Champlain and the other areas, but Rouse's Point is a political hotbed, one thing or the other, and it couldn't have been good for your stress. But we're going to take a break so I don't put my tongue in my eye tooth again here. We'll know what I'm saying. We'll be right back. We're talking about your second operation that took place in Burlington in 1984. You said 7 days you were out, and you indicated just a minute ago when I stopped you, you did something a little different in the second operation.
Well, actually, the surgeons tried, or attempted a new way of doing it. This has become very popular in bypass operations. They use what is known as the internal mammary arteries. Basically, it's a set of arteries that go into your chest and feed your chest, but of course, obviously, men don't need them as much as women. And what they do is they only have to disconnect one end. They only have to sever one end and clamp it off and then rotate it around. So there's only one connection made, so to speak.
That's the bypass you're talking about? Yeah.
Rather than take a piece out and patch it in, this one is already sort of in the plumbing system, so to speak, and they just bring it around and reattach it beyond the blockage area.
Is it big enough?
Actually, it's better material than the veins they take out of your legs, because the vein material is a softer material. It's less resilient. It's not structurally as sound.
Okay.
Arteries are tougher, and that's a much better vessel to use if you've got to do this type
So they
of thing.
did this in addition to removing it from your right
Well,
leg?
they took out the veins out of the right leg, which they used for a couple of the grafts, and one of the grafts was made with this left internal mammary artery.
And they can't use veins from another person, or not like
Your
that?
body rejects it.
Your body would reject it, okay. All right, so you got back and they told you better not work anymore at Harris.
Mm-hmm.
You were still mayor.
Yeah.
2-year term.
Yeah.
You didn't make all that term without problems either, did you?
No, well, actually, in 1986, I started developing angina again. It was like only 2 years later I started having problems again. And at that point in time, to be very frank with you, my wife and I were both at the impression, well, we've already done enough. We've been opened up twice. And
Yeah.
we were sort of depressed and down, but then, not being quitters, we talked about it and said, let's give it one more try. We felt that we had exhausted basically what Burlington could give to us or could do for us. We had remembered Dr. Paulus, and Dr. Paulus in the interim had gone to the Texas Heart Institute in St. Luke's Hospital in Houston, Texas, where he was being trained as a full cardiologist. He was on a fellowship there. So my doctor at that time, who happened to be Victor Castine.
And let's just mention who Victor Castine is. We mentioned Castine with Calvin Castine, and Victor's father was Victor, and he was my stepfather's brother, so he's my cousin as well as Dick Paterno. They're all from that family, and he knows because his father died. I guess he made it to 60 or 61 as well as my father did. So he knows the family history of that. Okay, so that's who Dr. Castine is.
Well, Dr. Castine actually took over Dr. Paulus's practice when he went to Texas, and that's how I met Dr. Castine. Dr. Castine then became my heart doctor. We discussed the situation and felt that if Texas would take me on as a patient, I'd be willing to go. Arrangements were made. My wife and I flew out there. We were completely evaluated. We met Dr. Paulus out there again, and we were completely evaluated in the Texas Heart Institute, which is one of the top 5 in the nation.
Okay, let me interrupt you again. I hate to do this, but did you go there because of Dr. Paulus or because of the reputation of this institute being one of the top 5?
I would have to say both, but Dr. Paulus is being there. My confidence in his
Okay.
abilities had a lot to do with it.
It's important to have confidence in the
Yes.
person, right?
Oh, yes, yeah. You got to believe in your doctor.
Okay, now you and your wife.
Now, through his good graces, we were availed of, basically, we got some of the top cardiologists in the country to examine me. At that point in time, what they attempted to do was called the balloon angioplasty, where they go in very similar to a catheterization. They go to the vessel that's involved, and they pry it open, so to speak, by inflating a balloon inside the artery. And what it does is it pushes the plaque, which is the end result of cholesterol. It pushes it away from and opens up the pipe, so to speak. And I felt wonderful after they did this. Comparing it to heart surgery itself, it's like night and day. I mean, it's not too invasive. They're a little cut in your thigh and that kind of thing. I came out of that fine. The next day I was out of the hospital, because that's usually, they almost do it on an outpatient basis. I was only in the hospital a day after they did the procedure. We came home. Unfortunately, on the trip home, I think I caught a flu, because I became very ill upon getting home 4 or 5 days later. The local doctors here came over to the house, took one look at me and said, he's severely dehydrated, we gotta bring him in and rehydrate him. I got another ambulance trip, went down, felt pretty good on the way down, except I thought it was the way I was sitting on the gurney. I was getting a chest pain, but I thought it was just the muscle. And unfortunately, when they got me in the hospital to treat me for the dehydration, I got a full-fledged heart pain. I sat down on the bed, looked at the nurse and said, sorry, I'm a heart patient, but you better call the doctor, I'm having a heart attack. Which he promptly did, and Dr. Castine was on duty that night. He come rushing up. Immediately I was transferred to coronary care, and he stayed with me all night long administering medications and stopped helped me survive, let's put it that way. There was a bit of damage done at that time. Basically, the angioplasty was not successful. It closed right down again. As an end result of this, Texas was a little bit shocked. They wanted us back. We were back there within a month. They reevaluated the situation again. And when I'm talking about reevaluations, almost every one of these evaluations is another heart catheterization. So they looked again, and basically they said, we're not going to try that. It isn't going to work. We're going to try to maintain you as long as possible on medication, because you can only have one more bypass surgery, and we don't want to use that, take it until it's absolutely
What do you mean you can
necessary.
only have one more?
Well, you run out of veins.
Oh, that you can put...
The spare parts angle is tough.
I see, yeah. And
You've only got 2 legs and
Yeah,
2 arms,
yeah,
and
yeah. This has got to be a very, very disheartening time for you and Elaine.
it is. It's discouraging, but I've got to give credit where credit is due. I've been blessed by a very, very supportive, loving wife
Obviously.
who has gone through every one of these things. From literally, my first heart problem started 2 months after we were married, so she's known this right from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
She's been extremely supportive. She's been through all of this with me. I'll tell you, I think half the reason I fight these things off is I love her so much I wouldn't want to leave her.
All right. So what I wrote some notes down here. So you ended up with another operation.
Well, basically what they did, the doctors talked, both Plattsburgh and Texas, and it was decided to maintain me on medication as much as possible. But I had to go to the hospital every 2 months and take what is known as a thallium stress test, which is basically a treadmill test, but they inject a radioactive dye, which gets to your heart, and then they do a CAT scan of your heart so they can see the circulation, or whether certain portions of your heart are not getting adequate blood supply. All right. This went on for about a year or more. In September of 1987, I was, actually it was September 9th, I remember it very clearly. I was doing a thallium stress test with Victor Castine, Dr. Victor Castine, and we only got 2 minutes into it, and he stopped the machine and said, Paul, it's time to use your ticket to Texas. You're in deep trouble. So at that point in time, what was happening is that the artery that feeds the left side of your heart, which is the most important one, the left anterior descending, was 98% blocked, and I was in what they call a pending heart attack mode.
Is this your diet that keeps causing this?
No, it's my heredity.
Yeah.
Actually, my grandparents and my great-grandparents, none of the males lived beyond the age of 55, or most went in the 30s.
Before we go to Texas again, you see a person like this on the street, and you say, look what a nice smile he has, and he has no problems. I've got a bad headache. Why is it me? Look at this guy here. He feels so good. We don't know the way the other half live and the problems that people are going through. And sometimes when maybe a clerk in the store or somebody's a little curt to you, he may be having some real bad problems at home. I can assume that when Elaine got some phone calls some of these days, it may have affected the way she answered, because she's thinking of Texas and her husband more than maybe the printing job that day, although you don't try to. Same with Calvin or me, it's the same way. So don't figure out what's wrong with a person automatically. We'll take another break, enough philosophy for a while. We'll be right back. We're moving along. We're in Texas. It's 1987, and while we were off camera, Calvin brought up, why is it called a bypass?
Well, actually, it's very similar to a plumbing term, okay? What occurs is your native artery has a blockage, almost complete in most cases. In some cases, it is complete. And what they literally do, if they're using vein material and not part of this artery business I told you about earlier, they bypass the blockage. They literally attach part of the vein to the aorta, which is the main blood supply. They go by the blockage, attach it to that artery, and then that portion down gets its blood supply. So it literally bypasses the blockage.
Very much like a detour here on Lake Street in Rouse's Point. You turn off next to Racine's garage area, and you're coming down, and you get in front of Spiegel's house. They're working on the road, so they turn you up on the one on Pine Street, go by Frank Kavanaugh's area, go down Maple, and come back down around by the Anchorage, and that's what you're doing with the vein, right?
You've had a Rouse's Point bypass.
Yeah, the Rouse's Point bypass right there. Matter of fact, they call some of these things over in Vermont a bypass around Swanton or something, because of bridges and so forth. Okay, so you had this operate again 7 days?
Yes, actually, when it came time for the surgery, Dr. Paulus arranged for me to have the services of an extremely well-known, famous doctor, Dr. David Ott, who was an outstanding heart surgeon. He did a double bypass using, in this case, my right internal mammary artery, which was rather unusual at the time because they attached it to the left side of my heart to feed that left artery that was blocking up.
So, go ahead.
Again, it was very successful. My recovery period was amazing. I was only in primary intensive care for 6 hours. They had the tubes out of me already. Within 4 days, I walked a mile in the hospital. Came home within 7 days. Ended up, actually 30 days later, I danced at my wife's best friend's wedding.
Let's mention who that is.
Mary Maskell.
Mary Maskell. Of course, we got to mention the Maskells here from around this point. You know, her mom and dad.
Felt pretty safe though, because Mary is an intensive care nurse, and half the people at the wedding were either doctors or intensive care medical people. So I figured if anything happened, I had plenty of help.
We got to mention names when we're talking on Hometown Cable, because these are people that many people know. Mary Maskell's been in Albany for over 15 years, probably or more. Huh? Okay. Along the way, you must have got a lot of jokes that saying you ought to have a zipper or something, huh?
Well,
you must have heard that expression.
I often requested the doctors they put one of those yellow and blue make green Ziplocs, because it's easier than going through that bypass ritual. But actually, when they went to Texas, the surgeon there was so talented, he literally cut out all the previous scar tissue on my chest. And I've got the cutest little tiny line that goes down my chest now, where at one point it was quite wide. It's really narrow now.
So Dr. Paulus wasn't doing any operations other than the catheterization?
He was doing the catheterizations and the angioplasties, but he was not doing heart surgery. He does not do heart surgery to this day.
He doesn't? Okay.
No. He is a cardiologist. The difference between a cardiologist is he diagnoses and does those types of things, bypasses, and not bypasses, but angioplasty and that catheterization procedure, whereas a thoracic heart surgeon does the actual cutting.
Okay. Now, certainly, there must have been something else that happened, or we wouldn't be talking to you today, because it's 10 years, nearly 9 years. So something else has happened not too long ago that got us together today. And tell us what.
I got very fortunate. We got about 8 years out of this last bypass operation. In 1994, I used to teach religion at St. Patrick's School, and unfortunately, right in the middle of a religion class, I had a heart attack. And again, Rouse's Point to the rescue. They brought me down again, and at that time it was determined that they wanted another catheterization done to see what was going on. They were literally claimed, you may have a time bomb in there, we want to find out what's happening. I went to Burlington. Burlington did the procedure. This time they went in through my arm, which is a lot better than when they go in through your leg.
It's better?
Well, you can sit up within 2 hours afterwards. You don't have to go through all the same procedures. It's, in my way of thinking, a lot simpler.
So do you have a choice?
Well, it depends on the doctor, actually.
Okay.
It depends on the cardiologist. If he feels he can do what he has to do, he can go in through the arm. Some prefer the arm, some prefer the groin. I happen to luck out and get the arm guy. They did that, and basically what they found is that all I had left was 2 bypasses feeding my heart. All my native arteries are all blocked up. One of the bypasses, which was at that time 7 years old, was pretty blocked up. And they felt that it would be too dangerous at that time to try to do an angioplasty because I had not done well with the previous one,
yeah.
right? The previous one had not been successful. They felt the fact that ballooning a piece of vein material that was 8 years old was rather dangerous, and they really were not enthusiastic about doing anything with it. They said, if we try to do this procedure, there's a 50-50 probability that you won't survive it. Obviously, I did not want to take a flip of a coin, so I said, no, we won't do it. We came home and they upped the medication again. I was put on blood thinners, and we did pretty well until last September. Last September, I had another angina attack. It was pretty persistent, pretty consistent and persistent. At that time, they got me through that with the appropriate medications and the like. And at that time, Dr. Victor Castine started talking about an angioplasty again, but in this case with a stent installed. Now, a stent is a wire, stainless steel wire-like device that they have now, it's sort of become part of the angioplasty procedure. When they go in with the balloon and they inflate the balloon, shortly thereafter they inflate the spring-like device, and when they inflate it, it spreads open and it holds the artery walls open. It gives it structural integrity so that it doesn't...
So it has a tendency to go back.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how do you spell stent?
S-T-E-N-T.
That's something new?
It's procedurally, yes, it's about 2 to 3 years old.
Uh-huh.
They've been doing them about 2 to 3 years on most angioplasty patients.
There is a video that's been put out. That you'll see part of it after this, our live part is finished, where it will show in part of this video out in Kentucky, a segment in it is about Paul Cloutier, and with his doctor, Dr. Paulus, and it will show you what this stent looks like. And that's what brought this about our meeting today, because this is something new, and I guess that many veins will collapse after a while, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how big of a unit is this? I'm figuring something smaller than my finger.
You're going to be amazed at this.
Okay.
You might want to get a picture of this. This is actual photographs taken during... It's probably going to reflect.
Can you... Does this give...
This is actually a cross-section. This would be looking down into the aorta.
Uh-huh.
This is the bypass that was involved. This is the 8-year-old bypass. If you'll notice right here how narrow it is.
Okay.
And it says here pre-stent. All this other thing, these things you see here, these are staples and wires that hold me together. I've got a literal junkyard in my chest.
Okay.
So this is the bypass, and you can see it's very narrowed right there. And if that were to block off, I would have lost all blood feed to the back portion of my heart, the back right portion. Okay, so it was important that something be done. Now this, taken right after the procedure was done, I think you can see it's pretty dramatic. It's the same area, the same aorta. Now you see the difference between the two vessels.
And you can see how dark it is. I guess that's where the stent is, right?
That's where they install the stent.
And now, this vein is what area? The size of a pencil? Bigger?
Probably about the size of a pencil.
A pencil, so that they have this, it's a wire mesh. It looks a little bit, all I could think of when I first saw it was the old hair curlers, that with the metal, and they had some kind of like hair sticking out of those. This is just the metal part completely. All right, that's what it was. So before we'll get into some more pictures, we'll take a short break. I want to remind you, you're watching Hometown Cable. My name is Bob Venn. This man right here is...
Paul Cloutier.
Paul Cloutier, and Calvin Castine, who don't want to talk, but he's right behind that camera. He's doing a great job, and we're here to talk a little bit about, and we're going to maybe cover how lucky you are to have survived all these different attacks. We don't all do that. We just saw the before and after, the big difference there. When this was happening now in September last year, obviously you are very confident in this Dr. Paulus, but
Yes, I
he
was.
wasn't in Texas anymore.
No.
So what did you do? How did you?
Well, actually, I got smart. Dr. Victor Castine and I discussed the situation. My options were very limited. Okay, I could sit and wait for the next heart attack, hoping it would be a small one, or I could do something about it. Burlington had already written us off and said they didn't want to do anything about it. They didn't feel it would be safe. We talked about trying to find Dr. Paulus. I got a hold of Dr. Valukas, who's a good personal friend of Dr. Paulus's. Got the right phone numbers, made some phone calls. And about a week later, at 10 o'clock at night, I got a phone call from Dr. Paulus in Ashland, Kentucky. We discussed my case. I told him what was going on, what my symptoms were, what had occurred and such. He said, "Oh, I think we could fix that." I said, "Would you take me on as a patient?" He said, "Yes." I said, "When do you want me there?" And within a week to two at the most, we were on our way to Ashland, Kentucky.
When I saw this video, it is done in Ashland, Kentucky, and it shows you there talking to Dr. Paulus. I was thinking of something like Louisville, Kentucky, or some big medical center that's it's called the King's Daughters Medical Center in Ashland, Kentucky, and I couldn't find Ashland. I thought it would be big on my map, so I went to the index and found out the little tiny 23,000 people, but a real medical center, huh?
Yes, actually, if anybody familiar with Dr. Paulus will recognize this term. Dr. Paulus calls Ashland very Burgonian after the B-U-R-G-H pronunciation of Plattsburgh. It's very similar in size, and the people there are a lot like Plattsburgh people, a lot like us. And it's different, though, because Ashland, Kentucky is in the northeastern corner of Kentucky, and right across the Ohio River. It also services West Virginia. It also services southeastern Ohio, so it's a regional medical center. So the population of Ashland is deceiving because he's covering a much larger area.
So it's a lot of doctors, too, I assume. Huh?
There's a medical center geographically or structurally about the size of Plattsburgh Hospital, maybe a bit bigger, okay?
And they do heart operations in general?
They do bypass.
Bypass,
I don't believe they may be doing, but I don't believe they're doing any transplants at this stage there. But they are doing bypass operations. They do angioplasty. They do another procedure which is called the TEC procedure, which is a TEC procedure, which is basically like a catheterization. Dr. Paulus does this. He goes in, it's like a little mini Roto-Rooter that grinds all the stuff out and vacuums it out. So
Now, Burlington does do stents.
Burlington
Right.
does stents, yes.
Right. Is it a very common operation that you know of?
It's becoming more common because they have found the failure rates in angioplasties have become very high because it's just natural. It's vein material that isn't structurally strong. It has a tendency to want to close up, or it's your own artery material that has a tendency to want to reblock, and that's what occurs. But by putting this structural steel, in a sense, in it, it keeps it open.
It's nothing more like a little, it's wire. And you'll see it in this video afterward. Please stay tuned and watch this because obviously it's one of the things that are very important today. How long were you there for this procedure?
Actually, we saw Dr. Paulus. We were in Ashland for 10 days max. We saw Dr. Paulus the day after we arrived. He examined me. Immediately the next morning, I entered the hospital, which was a Friday. They did a cardiac catheterization to evaluate the situation. At 11 o'clock that night, he visited me in my room. told me what he saw, what he recommended, which was basically that he felt he could balloon it, he could angioplasty it, and he could put a stent in. There were some risks involved, basically on the fact that because of the location of the blockage in this case, which was right near the aorta, this was dangerous. And additionally, because of previous surgeries and the fact that my right internal mammary artery goes across to the left side of my heart, surgical backup would not be a viable option. He would not have a surgeon in case something blew or went wrong. And I felt confident enough in his talents that that was okay with me. We agreed to go. Actually, we were literally let out of the hospital for a couple of days to relax. He scheduled me for, this was like late Friday night, he scheduled me the following Monday morning for the procedure, and we went ahead and did it.
Tough couple days?
Not really. We went out in his boat and had a good time fishing and everything else.
You know what makes me think when you do this is that you must be living on pins and needles all the time and wondering when the next one's going to occur.
You can't do that. You'd be a bowl of Jell-O in the corner of the room just quivering. Now, my wife and I have both been very fortunate in having good family support systems. We have good family support, and also our church helps us.
I was going to say, you give us have religious conviction.
Our church helps us, our prayers help us, and we have faith that it isn't going to happen until God says it's going to. Okay, and we just don't think about it every day. If you did that, you couldn't function. We just try. We thank God every morning when we wake up.
Yeah.
Thanks for another one. We'll try to make it the best we can.
Good thing that Elaine works for a family business, because she's taking quite a bit of time off too, huh?
Oh my God, she's well traveled due to my medical problems. Yes.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, she's a trooper. 4 times she went to Texas with me, each time not knowing whether she was going to come back with me sitting in the seat next to her or in the cargo hold.
Yeah.
And she did it. And again, it's the same deal in Ashland, Kentucky. She went there with that threat, and she came back with it.
Okay. Thing we haven't said a thing about, being that we'll take a break after we just start on this at least. Money. These things cost one heck of a lot of money in addition to travel expenses. That must be in itself is a big expense.
Well,
that's not covered by insurance, travel money.
No. I've been very fortunate. Having worked for Harris, I had a very excellent medical plan. To this day, I still have it. I have no complaints. It's treated me very, very well. These operations are very expensive. All these procedures are expensive. I've had very good coverage. I can't complain there. It has been a little bit trying, let's put it this way. Our savings has decreased to a point of panic almost, but our savings have decreased with all this traveling because the traveling is not paid by the insurance company. But you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and living expenses while you're there. And that means that you may have to sell your boat one of these days.
If there was somebody out there willing to buy a boat, I'd like to talk turkey.
You would.
I tried to sell it for 2 years and nobody was
buying
buying
boats.
boats.
Because you're a boatman, right? You like boating.
Yeah, 23-foot cruiser that's in excellent shape, but well, if it ever warms up this year, and if the lake level goes down, we'll have it in as soon as possible.
Well, see, that's one of the other things. Maybe I'm a worrywart to an extent, but I would worry about being out there in the middle of the lake and coming up with an attack. What do you I think so. Minutes are important.
You
right?
may not believe this, but you know what we do? We run drills.
You do, huh?
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll be sitting out in the boat, and I won't tell my wife or anything, and I'll just suddenly say, honey, I think it's time for you to take the boat into the marina as quickly as possible. We'll pretend.
Yes.
And she can handle the boat as well as I can. She'll get it started. She'll make a radio call for emergency help. And we do drills out there. Plus, we've made a rule. We don't go any further south anymore on the lake than Belcourt Island because rescue help gets harder and harder to find as you go further south.
Right.
Up to and including Belcourt and Plattsburgh, you can get, quick help if you need it.
Okay. We'll take another break. We're talking with Paul Cloutier. And it's something none of us want to think about, but it's there. We hear about him every day. It doesn't mean the end of the world. There's an example right here. He's had 3, plus this new procedure called the stent. What do you call it?
Well, it's angioplasty with stent.
All right. Angioplasty with stent.
Yep.
Okay. We'll be back. This is the hospital in Ashland, King's Daughters Medical Center. There's a letter written in February to Paul and Elaine. Thank you so much for your assistance in creating our Cardiopulmonary Institute News Magazine show. We are extremely pleased with the results, and you can be proud of the part you played in educating our community about heart disease. That's the movie you're going to see after this. It's about a half hour. How did that come about, Paul?
Well, it was rather unusual that people from out of state would be coming. I mean, when I say out of state, so far out of state, because, again, being a regional medical center, we were probably the first patients from New York area.
Uh-huh.
And they were sort of impressed with the fact that we had traveled because of the doctor and because of their facilities. So after everything was successful, about a month later, I received a call from the hospital, and they told me that they were doing this video on their cardiology system, and they had asked 4 doctors to participate in this, and Dr. Paulus being one of them, and each doctor was allowed to pick the patients he wanted or suggest. He suggested myself, and my wife wasn't his patient, but we're all friends, so he said the next thing I knew, they were calling us and asking us if we would be willing to help them make a video and go to Kentucky at their expense to do the video, and we agreed.
At their expense? You must have loved that.
That's the first time I didn't have to pay. It's true. I got a trip to Kentucky and back for my wife and I, and they put us up in a hotel, a very fine hotel, and they provided us with transportation. It was the first time we weren't paying. But we went and we made the video. It was an interesting process. I was more than happy to see Dr. Paulus again, and it was a thrill of a couple of months later to get a copy of the video and get this letter. It was important to me. I felt like I had helped somebody.
And on the back here, it shows where they were going to show the 6 or 7 showings. That would be January through February. We did this around the first of the year. And one of the things that you'll notice, how many takes did you have to do?
Actually, we did it all in one take.
You did?
Yep.
Just like Hometown Cable, huh?
Of course.
So just remember, what you're seeing in this video, and which is really a big deal, you're seeing every day, although maybe not quite as heart or life-creating as this year, we were talking heart diseases, but you see that every day here on Hometown Cable, where Calvin and Sam and others do things and let you know what's happening in the area. So there's a whole list of the doctors here who are involved. And one thing that he brought, we have, and this is nice mementos, Greenup, Kentucky, November 30th, 1995. New Yorker comes to Ashland for treatment by KDMC cardiologist. This is Dr. Paulus, Paul, and Elaine. So that was a kind of a big deal for him to have someone from New York coming to Little Ashland, Kentucky, you know, where you go to the big cities, but that was right here, and that was very nice. I think also, this is one little file. You must have big files.
Yeah, I got quite a bit of paperwork on all
You
this.
said in Plattsburgh they have a lot on you?
Well, my medical file in Plattsburgh Hospital is approximately 19 inches thick.
This thick, because he's had a lot of it.
Just a quick synopsis of my condition. I've had 6 heart attacks, 2 of which no damage occurred to my heart because they use this new miracle drug called TPA. We were talking about it during the break before. It's a genetically engineered medicine, which if they can inject it into your bloodstream within 6 hours of the onset of a heart attack, that it usually can stop the heart attack immediately. And when I'm talking immediately, I'm talking about the speed of the blink of an eye. Sometimes it takes longer, but usually that's how quick it happens. They call it the silver bullet. Goes right to the clot, destroys the clot, and your heart starts beating normal again. The pain goes away instantly. So I've had that procedure done twice. So twice there was no damage. I've had the 3 bypass operations. You've heard me talk about these evaluations. Well, that really adds up to 13 catheterizations, 2 angioplasties, and you're probably not going to believe this, about 25 Valium stress tests over the years. I could probably do some of these procedures myself by now.
Any one of these might have killed your brother or your dad
Oh, yes.
in the past, right?
Yeah.
A big advance in this.
Well, just in the last few years, like the development of the TPA, that's within the last 10 years. When my dad had his heart problems at age 55, which was back in the 60s, 58s and 60s, these things weren't options at all. I mean, they wouldn't have even considered cutting open a person's chest, stopping the heart, and doing bypass plumbing on it.
Certainly talk to your doctor. Take heed of what your doctor says.
Oh, yes.
We've got good doctors in the area, Dr. Castine and other heart doctors in Plattsburgh who are not, are they cardiologists?
Dr. Castine is an internist.
Internist?
Dr. Sable and Dr. Baker are cardiologists.
Okay.
Some internists, such as Dr. Castine, specialize mostly with heart, but just as talented.
Okay.
And half of really surviving many of this is, some people should realize, you got to ask your doctors what's going on. You can't be afraid to get a diagnosis. You can't be afraid to challenge your doctor and ask them, why did this happen? What's really going on? So you got to educate yourself. And the other thing is, trust your doctors. If you have trust in your doctor, you can do a lot of things.
If you don't, get another one.
That's right.
I mean,
you have a right to say, this
exactly.
isn't enough, and I don't like his answers, I'm going to try somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm aggressive that
Yeah.
way. Most people know I'm a little aggressive.
Yeah.
Basically, I've been bugging you with this piece
Yeah,
of
you've
paper.
got a little piece of paper. It's got to be important.
These are my...
Stand by for something really important.
These are called my 4 magical Ds, my deadly Ds.
Deadly
okay?
D. D like in dog.
Yeah, if you've got heart disease, okay?
Yeah.
These are the things that can cause you premature death. Denial, denying you have a heart condition, denying that the pain in your chest is real. Don't do that. Delay, when you get chest pain, if you are on nitro or if the chest pain lasts more than 15 minutes, call the ambulance and get to a medical center. That's critical. Delay is deadly. Dependency, now this sounds strange, dependency. Do not, no matter how good your doctor is, no matter how much confidence you have in your doctor, no matter where you are, do not depend on your doctors to do everything. The average doctor, especially here in the North Country, has anywhere from 500 to 1,000 patients. Many people think that, oh, well, Dr. So-and-so knows me, he must have my file on his desk and he knows what's going on.
He knows right in his head too,
This is impossible. You should learn about your disease, read about it as much as possible, educate yourself so that you know what your options are, and you can talk intelligently with your doctor. And don't depend on him to call you up and say, Bob, how are you feeling today? He's too busy to do that. He's taking care of other people, so I don't depend on him.
Okay.
Okay? And then the fourth one is depression. Don't let it get you down. It's ironic, I've discovered personally through experience, when you go through heart surgery, bypass surgery, you have 3 bouts of depression. One within 7 days after the surgery, one within 2 months, and one within 6 years. 6 months, rather. And there are actual waves of depression that are very serious. But if you understand they're coming, you can say, oh, I know what this is. And you can shut it off. You can say,
Some
I'm not
people
gonna-"
can, Paul.
Well, I've been able to.
Okay.
I've been able to. With the support of my wife,
Yeah.
if she sees me going down, she'll say, you're getting depressed again, and then we'll talk about it and we'll work it out.
Okay, and if you feel depressed and you can't shake it, go
Give me a
see
call.
his wife. Go see his wife. Her name is Elaine.
Give me a call.
Give Paul a call. Yes, so in summing up, we're going to, first of all, Paul, we thank you very much
You're welcome.
for bearing your soul here with your medical problem.
Bearing my soul and showing you my heart.
Yes, and showing you your heart too. We're not going to look at your wounds because I couldn't take them. And the scars are there, internal as well as external, I'm sure. And right now you're feeling well.
I feel very, very well. Extremely well. I don't have any chest pain since the last procedure. I've been feeling great.
And know, as they say, that this too will pass, right, I guess. Remember denial, delay, dependency, and depression. And if you want to add some more, you can do that. We very much appreciate you taking the time, and we hope you've enjoyed. And don't leave yet, because the next 30 minutes shows, I think there are 4 segments to this, different things. One is a man who works for the University of Kentucky, takes tickets and is an usher type thing, and his problems. There's Paul there. Then there's a lady, and then I forgot the 4th one. I've seen it, and it's well worth watching, and we hope that none of you have heart problems, none of you that watch this show, but we know that's not possible, right? We never know, including myself. We never know what's going to be here tomorrow, but don't worry about it.
No. You know, it's ironic that this particular video they made in Kentucky was called Beating Number One, and number one obviously being heart disease, and its cause of, how many deaths it causes each year. But the reference was also made to Kentucky, which the University of Kentucky is quite often number 1 in basketball. It just happens to be, again, number 1 this year.
Yep.
So it was appropriately titled and well timed.
It sure was. Thank you very much for your comments.